At the time, the Iranian government had already assassinated 3 people. I guess somebody had taken pictures of my home and posted it on a jihadi extremist series of websites where I was labeled with a fatwa as an enemy of Islam. I started getting that particular death threat doxed on Iranian national TV. So I got a little pissed off, and I read that the Iranian government had enacted this new law which said that any mixed gender entertainment facility like a restaurant had to have IoT cameras pointing where women would be. And what it was if a woman removed her hijab, then they would run out and send the religious police. I thought mathematically, and I go, that's going to be thousands of cameras. And what is the likelihood that thousands of cameras that are being administrated and managed by one party are going to have all different credentials and are going to be super secure? Because I need to get into these systems. I need the availability over that. So then I built a series of open source intelligence tools. I was able to find over 10,000 of these cameras. I was able to get into all of them, and then I could disable them. I happened to give them to a variety of different governments who may have used that for facial recognition to find terrorists. Then they had an assassination attempt, and me and a couple of friends were smoking cigars at a cigar bar. And all of a sudden, some guy came out of nowhere and threw really, really powerful illegal level tear gas into the cigar bar while we were there.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you this question real fast. SWIFT, right? All the banking that's done on SWIFT, and then the Chinese have their own insular SIPs, right? Does that make it easier or harder to hack into like the Chinese system?
Well, neither system is, nothing's 100%, but because it has to communicate with older legacy systems, which sometimes are built on programming code that is extremely old, it becomes problematic. So we've seen, for example, hacks into the Chinese system, into the Russian system, but also especially the SWIFT system, because the SWIFT system has been slow to upgrade things. So there was a case, let me see if I remember it correctly. So there is a criminal gang. It's considered a criminal gang by the European Union, but a terrorist group by the Netherlands and 9 other countries.
Interesting.
Right? It's called the Grey Wolves. And yes, and they are associated with Erdogan and the Turkish government. And years ago, before they started getting fat, mad funding from the Turkish government, they were doing cybercrime. And so they took advantage of the SWIFT network to get, almost nine figures out of a Qatari bank by hacking into the SWIFT network. And that's how they got their initial funding.
That's pretty wild. What a successful first heist, right?
Right?
9 figures? That's fucking
9
crazy,
figures.
man. I know.
Right?
No, I need something that efficient to make me money, but hopefully, but it can't be illegal, because I don't want to go to jail, and I'm not that smart to do anything like that. But let's officially welcome you back to the show, Chris Kubecka, Bane of the Department of Justice, cyber warfare aficionado. I wore, because of what you've been on, I wore my Yuri Bezmenov shirt today. Because we're gonna talk about espionage and all that other fun stuff, the Russians, which you've been doing. So why not wear a T-shirt with the defector KGB agent on it? You know what I mean?
Yes.
I feel like it's appropriate. So let's catch us up. What have you been doing recently? You've been on the Estonian-Russian border, doing fun things, sightseeing, all this fun stuff.
So one of my research projects right now is I'm going along some of the contentious border regions between the European Union and Russia. So that includes Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia as a concentration area. And why I'm doing this is for a multitude of reasons, but a big one is the quality and the amount of misinformation and propaganda that is coming out of Russia aimed at ethnic Russian populations along those borders is absolutely unreal. If you compare what you see in the U.S. to what you see there. What you see in the U.S. is AI slop.
Yeah.
And what you see
A lot of
there,
it.
a lot of it, is extremely high quality. And the reason being is Russia does not have the physical troops anymore. I mean, they're transporting supplies using civilian cars that are stolen and donkeys. I want to stress,
Wow.
and donkeys. So then they can use cyber and cyber influence operations as a force multiplier, right? Shoot once to many, many people. And back in the day, during the Soviet times, they had this Russification policy where they would move people. Oh, there's too many ethnic Estonians, we're going to send them to Russia, and we want to make sure that there's ethnic Russians there, so we're going to swap out some populations. Of course,
Gotcha.
when the wall came down, here were all these people who still very much spoke Russian and were ethnic Russians, and they still have leanings, in many cases, but not all, towards Russia. And imagine if China had done the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a very long game, right? And
Yes.
now one of the excuses for going into Ukraine from 2014 till now is
Yeah.
protecting the ethnic Russian population. So when they went into the region called the Donbass, which is made up of two provinces called Luhansk and Donetsk, which are the eastern regions, their excuse was we have to protect our people, our ethnic Russians. And so now it's been in an active hot war since 2014 in
Yeah.
that region.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well, I gotta. So this just goes all the way back to what Putin said when he first took office, I guess you could say, where he wanted to, where he wanted to revive the old USSR, and this is him doing it. But I gotta ask what you think about the fact that you just said the language that was used to go into Ukraine, especially the last couple of years ago, was about protecting ethnic Russians. The groups there are ethnically Russian anyway. They speak Russian, they vote Russian, all these things. And now in Estonia, where there's kind of the same thing that happened, do you think that this is a lead up to maybe another invasion into another country? And you think so? Okay. Because all this talk about stopping the Ukraine-Russia war, and just today, which you may have seen, I'm not sure given the time, but there's been more bombing in Kiev, and Trump came and made a statement about he's not sure what the hell Putin is doing, and he's mad at him and all this stuff, but it doesn't seem like anything is going to end anytime soon.
No.
Are you guys fearful of another invasion in another country?
Absolutely, especially near Narva, Estonia, and especially towards Finland, because Finland has almost 1,300 kilometers, about 1,300 kilometers, something like that, of a border.
Okay.
And, for example, they've just started putting up, I think, 35 kilometers worth of a wall. Now, with this, they've already been facing this very interesting problem from Russia and Belarus borders. Unfortunately, Russia has been weaponizing immigration. And so what they've been doing is advertising to places like the worst parts of Syria, the worst parts of Afghanistan, you name it, saying, hey, come to Russia and we'll help you get over the border. And so the Finns, the Estonians, the Polish, where they border Belarus, border guards have been violently shoving these immigrants who are desperate. I do have empathy for them, trying to get them over the border. And you don't know if they have weapons, you don't know if they have a bomb, you don't know if they're a terrorist. And that's why it's one of the reasons why it's so terrifying. So because of that, Poland, I believe, in 2021 had changed their laws that basically they would try not to accept anybody at the border in these situations being pushed over. Right. And what do you do if you're a NATO country? You can't fire at the Russian or Belarusian guards because you're going to suddenly escalate. But here they're using
Article 5.
Right, these people who, I'm sure most of them have the best intentions because, Afghanistan isn't the greatest place to, grow up or be born in. But,
no doubt.
What does that do for the rest of the security of Europe? Now imagine if, we have And I'm sure there are situations at the U.S. border where there is a certain extent of weaponization, right? There's a big fear of,
Oh, absolutely, there is.
what is the security of these people? And here you have this huge border, but we're playing with more than fire, we're playing with Russia.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's a great point, and I'm glad you brought up the border, because the whole time you're talking about this, it's exactly what I'm thinking about. And there definitely has been weaponization of the border. There was that video that made the rounds for a while. That guy from either Hezbollah or Hamas who was filmed. He said, you don't know my name, but you will know my name. And this is a bunch of other things. That not everybody that's coming across the border. The point is here that they're not all seeking asylum. No. A lot of them are there because they want to be a problem, and they want to be in the problem in the United States. The same over there. This sounds like a very calculated tactic, though. Like you said, pushing people over the border, knowing that certain people are going to be untracked, and then problems again in those regions. You before said too that he doesn't have the troops anymore. Do you think that like this whole game of the cyber attacks and then the border games is the hope of creating unrest enough to where, and then the long game is to eventually go into a NATO country, right? In Estonia, that would be World War III. That's what that would be.
Well, one of the things he's been doing is, are you familiar with the game of Go?
Go? No.
All right, so Go is a Chinese game. So most Westerners think of this as a chess game, but but chess is very strict on your movements, except if you've got the queen or the knight. But with Go, what you do is you've got houses that you have to protect, and if the enemy gets enough influence around your houses, then they take the house over. So it's more of a long game. And it's about maybe 3,000 years old. And to me, it's a game of Go. And what I'm seeing is taking over certain governments within, for example, NATO to create division. So in Europe, we've got 2 countries right now that are kind of outliers. Those are Hungary and Slovakia, which is led by FICO. And, for example, FICO attended the big Victory Day, May 9th parade in Moscow.
Right. So closeness with Putin.
Very closeness with Putin. And many, for example, Slovaks have been protesting, going, we don't want this kind of stuff again because it used to be a prior Soviet state. And then something interesting happened whilst I was in Narva. The elections in Romania. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but I'm involved a bit in Romania. They're quite a lovely country. And there is not only a huge amount of misinformation and propaganda that goes on around elections, but there's a lot of foreign interference. So late last year, when I landed in Bucharest, my friends are I swear to God, they're gonna kill me, because every time I land, something happens in Romania.
It's bad luck.
They called me the cyber harbinger of death. But anyway, it's fine. we joke.
That's your title from now on.
And I get into the hotel. I'm watching the election. I'm like, oh, this looks nice. I get unpacked, and then I look again, and I'm like, wait, who is this guy who's now getting way up in the first runoff? And it was this guy named Georgescu, and nobody knew who he was. So I came out of nowhere, and as we were looking into the case, here is a person who doesn't even know how to turn on a laptop, but via direct messages to influencers, he sent explicit instructions on how to game the TikTok algorithm, which in my opinion and many other opinions, that could have only been given by someone from within TikTok, which means here is this app that is, by the way, not legal to use. You cannot use TikTok in China. I do want to stress that. And these explicit instructions were sent. Now, how did he get these? And then, unfortunately, there was a lot of other mess where he had declared that he had spent no money on advertising, and then it turns out he was actually backed by a known mercenary who worked for PMC Wagner, and
Okay,
people
why?
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. What is the hack for the algorithm? What is that exactly?
So in his instructions, he said there's certain things with timing, certain hashtags, times of day, subject matter, terms, things of that nature, because also in the instructions it listed this is how you avoid being ruled a bot or spam by pushing out the messages too many times. So
Right.
you have to change the hashtag a little bit, you have to change this a little bit, you have to change the length of the video a little bit to be able to reuse this content and send out.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. So rules on you could use if you want to grow essentially and become popular in the algorithm. That makes sense. So
But yeah, but for him, right?
right.
Pushing. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. You know, things that really anybody who's looking to be an influence, I guess, are on there could use too. But yeah, when you're looking at these things like the Romanian elections, are you looking to make sure that they're valid? These elections, right?
Yes and no. I mean, Romania
Okay.
has a very good election system. I do want
Okay.
to stress that. Unlike some of their neighbors, I do love the country of Bulgaria, but wow, their elections are problematic, and there's been fraud even in the last election. So, to give
Okay.
you an idea, there's been seven major elections in the last 4 years, and still nothing. So, they're under a caretaker government. And over, there's fraud. And much of their parliament is, well, funded and, led by a couple of oligarchs who are very
Yeah.
pro-Russian in Bulgaria. So it's, even though they're a NATO country, it's a divided country between those two sentiments, and
Right.
also who is controlling really the parliament. And there's a lot of oligarchs in Bulgaria.
Well, let's take a country like Bulgaria real quick. You said they're a NATO country.
Yeah.
So if Russia were to invade them, it obviously would set off all this stuff and involve everybody else because of NATO. But are there any sort of provisions within the relationship between Bulgaria and NATO or within the Bulgarian government? What's to say that these oligarchs don't fund some sort of mutiny within the side of the country that splits Bulgaria into two different groups? Now this half says nope, we're this country, and now Russia can move into that, right? I mean, is there anything that protects something like that from happening, some sort of hostile, other than the fact that you said that they can't even vote anyway because it's so corrupt, but like taking over from the inside and turning it Russian without having to go to war? I mean,
Oh yeah, I mean that was one of the things I saw them kind of trying to do in Romania, and what we're seeing in other parts. So one of the reasons why I'm concentrating on, say, the border regions, and I also deal with elections, is I'm seeing that there's influence operations to take over local councils, local cities, to be on the pro-Russian side. And with that, there are certain influences that are increased. So should we really close that road for that border? Maybe we should improve the road, which would allow tanks at a later date. Right? So these are the types of
wow.
things that you have to be concerned about, because I don't believe, I'm crossing my fingers, that Russia is going to attack a NATO country tomorrow. I think they're going to agitate, but within 3 years, I do kind of follow, I believe it was Donald Tusk who came out with that, and I do believe that they can rebuild within about 3 to 5 years. Right now, they're quite desperate. They've activated naturalized citizens getting drafted, and they've drafted 80,000 naturalized or people with long-term residence permits who are
Okay.
non-citizens in Russia. So you came there to work from Uzbekistan, let's say, for a better opportunity. You're working in a restaurant. You're thinking this is great. Now you're at war.
Yeah. So it's pretty scary because this is a long game that seems like is being played. You said 3 years, and they could be rebuilt and doing this over again. So what exactly is your job when you go into these border regions? Are you there to just guarantee or try to guarantee or maybe even reveal to the world that this influence is happening? Is that your main goal?
Well, kind of split. Obviously, but I've never failed to find this kind of stuff. But to do it in an academic nature, because I want to make sure that everything is on the up and up. I'm very strict about that. I believe that computer science is a science, and cybersecurity is part of computer science. So I like peer reviewing. I like people to look over my stuff. I want to make sure it's correct, especially when we're dealing with this type of very contentious research. So you have to quadruple check everything, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be anyway.
Yeah.
But to also show some of these comparisons, when we think of, why are they thinking this way? Or why might they have voted this way? And you see it in international news, and also offer an understanding. And one thing I do see as it's still, the European Union is still kind of new with all of the countries. And there's always been like a east and west, north and south divide.
Yeah.
And the western part hasn't always believed the eastern part, saying, we think Russia's going to do bad things. They're like, oh, come on. You still got to hang up over communism. And then what happened, right?
Right.
So when, like, for example, the Germans decided, hey, we're going to go with the Nord Stream, and the East was like, what are you doing? Yeah, and the Germans went with the Nord Stream. And you're like, great unity there. So also, hopefully, because I live in the northern western part, and I deal a lot with various parts of the European Union, to also show this stuff in the West to make them understand, and take countries like Poland and Romania and Finland, etc., that they are not drama queens. This is absolutely real.
Right. So your messaging, well, let me just say this. I was thinking earlier when you were talking about it, but it almost just sounds like this is a weaponized PR campaign to set up for the future.
Oh, yes.
And hoping that by the time it comes to have a large-scale exercise on the other side of your border, you'll want us in there, and it'll have been normalized that Russia is good, and your Russian heritage is calling, and all these other things that I'm sure that they're probably playing on emotionally, because what we're talking about is are these social media campaigns, for the most part, the internet, that are these bubbles that people live in, like we talked about last time you were on, but it's so wild to think about that, because you're literally talking about something that is meant to just was meant in its origins to just be fun, right? Social media and the internet, right?
Yeah, right.
Look at what we do as humans. This is why we can't have nice things. We'll find a way to turn anything into a weapon. But it's pretty wild too. Do you think that the trust between people like you and Eastern Europe, and then all the naysaying that goes on in Western Europe, do you think that trust is sort of bridging, and there's going to be more of that fidelity, do you feel?
I do. I absolutely do. After the latest Romanian election came through, there were a lot of compliments going, we thought we were going to lose you, Romania, but we did not. And so hopefully that shows the western part of the European Union that the eastern part of the European Union is mature, is developed, because there's always that reputation as well, and that they want the European unity, because the East cannot survive without the West, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny too, because I've talked about the EU on our live show before, and just how old Europe is, and there's all these weird regional disagreements and all this stuff, and it's like the United States we're all these colonies, they had so much in common, right, for such a long time. And they fought, they worked, they bled together, all this stuff. But it's almost like the EU trying to like unite after the fact of having, oh my gosh, 2 millennium worth of history together, and all this anger. It's got to be way harder to do that than from the advent being a united states to now the European Union. But I'm going to ask you a question that I know probably is going to tick off a lot of my audience, because I want to know. And if you're listening, please hit that follow button. I'll do that. But or maybe you're not going to after this question. But I know that most Americans, or a lot of Americans, that voted for Donald Trump wanted the aid to Ukraine to stop, right? And I know that there are even a lot of people on the MAGA side, I guess you could say, who I would say even have become more pro-Russian because of what is probably a lot of propaganda about just how much more Western and ideological ways that Russia is, right? And even I've seen Putin put out a Christmas commercial. Have you seen this Christmas commercial where there's this is a couple years old, but it's a Russian family having a very traditional, like European Western looking Christmas, and then Christmas in America with SSRIs and LGBTQ stuff.
Yeah.
Does this sound familiar? Right.
Yes.
So he knows too that there's a sentiment that is in the United States that, and I agree that these like traditional Western values are eroding in the United States for sure. But Putin knows that as well and plays on it. So my question to you is, how hard is it now, if at all, to work with the U.S. government with the sort of sentiment that is shared there, to garner the support and trust for what you're doing, and then stick up for and say, hey, this is a problem, it's going to continue to happen? And it's, do you kind of get where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Like how much of a problem is that for you guys right now?
Well, I think one of the things that the European Union really needs to do is change a little bit of the narrative. Now, right now, we have war on our soil, but the cost of that war in keeping Russia at bay, when unfortunately the Ukrainians are the ones that are doing it right now. It's of absolute utmost importance. If Russia takes Ukraine, they will have most of the Black Sea. And even before this escalation, there were ships, fishermen, and everyone who would disappear from Romania and Bulgaria just to go out fishing because the Russians would grab them, kill them. Gone. Russia wants the Black Sea in full control. And if they get that, that would be a very bad thing. And that would allow them to creep forward. So how I look at it, when we are keeping Russia at bay and we are putting money, both European Union, United States, whomever, we are keeping our people physically from on that battlefield and enabling us to hopefully, if this war ever ends, I don't know, but we are keeping them at bay with a good amount of return on investment. We aren't having our people come back to the U.S. missing legs, these types of things. It's just a very hard burden, obviously, on Ukraine. But they're the ones who are keeping them at bay. And it's not just against the Russian border or against the Russians in Ukraine, but also the Ukrainians help get rid of the Russians in Syria. Ukrainians have been going into Africa and taking on PMC Wagner and another group called Sawa throughout Africa, where basically the Russian mercenary troops, Russia needs money. So they've been going into places like South Sudan, Burkina Faso, you name it, and they're guarding the gold mines. They're guarding the resources. They come in with influence operations, and then they get in. And there was a great one near Burkina Faso where the Ukrainians went in and helped one of the local groups get rid of a whole bunch of these mercenary Russian troops in a big battle. And the Ukrainians are actually taking care of all of this. So I
Wow.
don't know how well known any of that is.
I haven't even heard that before. No,
Yeah.
I was just going to say that I haven't seen that on the news at all. How long have they been in Africa doing that? We're now talking about like a multi-continent war.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. Since at least early last year, mid last year. Absolute. Right after South Sudan started this civil war, part of which is because of Russia. Because Russia is got its tendrils into a lot of places, and especially now in Western Africa and in places like South Sudan. And they've been using cyber influence operations. A few years ago, I think it might have been during COVID, I was supposed to go to Burkina Faso to do research directly with another group on the cyber influence operations, because I discovered a leak where it appeared that Russia had sold a basic version of their cyber influence operation to a jihadi terrorist group who had been attacking the legitimate government. But before I could board my plane, a coup happened, and obviously KLM
Wow.
could not fly to Burkina
Yeah.
Faso. And we were
No,
like,
absolutely.
can't fly there. And it was
Right.
from that. And this was even before the escalation. So these things are, the way I look at Russia, I don't think they're as long game as China, but they try to get very close,
Yeah.
and they're everywhere.
How much do you think the influence for this long game is coming from China? Like right now, do you think China's pushing, knowing that like if things were to go kinetic, right, that the United States, banking on the United States not being able to handle what's going on in Europe, and then whatever were to happen in the Pacific? Do you think there's a large influence push for Russia to continue to? Yeah. Have you
Oh,
seen any
definitely.
evidence of that, like forensically or anything like that?
Yes. So even
Let's hear about
before the escalation in Ukraine, there were joint cyber influence operations that were occurring, for example, in Syria and in Yemen. And most recently, 2 weeks ago, Russia signed an AI agreement with China,
Yeah.
because Russia has a lot of things, but because of the brain drain over the years and so forth, they don't have the greatest AI tech in comparison to China.
Sure.
And of course, China can get a lot more hardware for lower cost than Russia can right now, because it all has to be smuggled in. So now it looks like they're starting to lean more and more on China to help them out with this situation.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm interested more. Why is it such a such a strategic win for Russia to monopolize control over the Black Sea?
So it goes back to their idea of not just the Soviet Union, but also reviving the empire. And this is something that's been discussed over and over again by Putin himself. When you had mentioned some of the history of the European Union, some of these historical grudges, basically. But with that, historically, Russia has tried to change the narrative on its history.
Yeah.
And part of that is to make it so that the history books that they write, quote unquote, they write one for every former Soviet state. They just recently came out with one about Finland, for example.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I don't
accurate.
recommend it. It's super accurate, right?
Yeah.
It can then get their made up historical ties back. And it's to me, it's a bit ooh, but I like to say nothing is crazier than nation state crazy.
Okay.
And right, so historically, the name of Russia or Russians came from a group called the Kievan Rus, as in Kiev or Kiev.
Yeah.
And they started becoming huge when a crown prince, because he could collect taxes, saw this Olga, of most likely a Viking, because the trading was from the Vikings all the way through Kiev to the Black Sea, and that's how they went. And so they married, they had a little kid, and then when he went out to collect taxes, they didn't want to pay taxes, so they murdered him brutally. And so she took revenge. She's actually the saint of revenge, and the only saint, both Catholic and Eastern Orthodox, and one of, I think, 3 women per both religions that are equal to the apostles. Because she took gory revenge. And from there, the Kievan Rus, they then Christianized. She was the first Christian. And she brought Christianity there. And it was during the Byzantine Empire and things like that. And then it blossomed. And then centuries later, Russia, out of the swamps, because St. Petersburg is actually a swamp, naturally. Some of the people went there because the tribe got big, and there came the Russians.
Yeah.
Now, the Russians don't like that history. They want their history to be started in St. Petersburg and in Russia itself.
Right.
But that's just not the case.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry. But all of this goes to the rewriting of their narrative. And I've never quite seen a country other than, say, North Korea or something like that, that constantly tries to get rid of real information and then rewrite all of this fantastical stuff.
No, that's pretty wild. I had no idea that they wrote history like that. Obviously, I think every country, I know the United States has done things like that. And China too, for sure. But it's a total rebrand of the past and using it as a framework to build the future, right? And say what you're doing is just because it's linked to thousands of years of Russian history and all this other stuff. It's also a great way to run a PR campaign online to make people pro. Yeah. No, go ahead.
One thing, I think of Russia as a failed state whose only power is because they have nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And because of that, they also have a lot of uranium deposits. So most of the world's nuclear facilities buy uranium from them. But also they've been trying to corner the market in other areas. So if they were to get Ukraine, and especially the parts that they wanted from the last negotiations, they would have also been able to corner the market on something called potassium. So there's a bit of a shortage of potassium now. To make different types of fertilizer. And there has been, I believe Scientific America started writing about it about 8 years ago. So it would enable the Russians strategically to also corner the market on the entire world's agriculture.
Right.
And that's not a good idea.
No,
that's just not.
No, you shouldn't have a single point of failure in anything, especially on the food that goes around the world. Yeah. What are other countries doing to offset that single point of failure that you've seen? Not much.
Supporting Ukraine. That's one thing, and I think that's one of probably 5 primary reasons why the Dutch government, for example, is so behind. Ukraine, not only because the Russians shot down a plane full of Dutch people. That was like our 9/11, because there were so many Dutch, and we have such a small population. It was extremely shocking. So but also the Netherlands, because specifically Amsterdam, there was so much starvation, incredible amount.
When are we talking?
During the Second World War, there was, towards the end, a blockade that the Nazis put up, and the Allies couldn't get through until finally the Canadians got through in our particular area. But Amsterdam was like the last area liberated. And the winter before, over 20,000 people died of starvation. So because of that, the Netherlands said, we ain't starving. So they're the second largest food exporter in the world for a country of 18 million. The second largest food exporter in the world.
Yeah.
And so
the Netherlands is smaller than a good bit of many states.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's crazy.
I think we're a bit bigger than Rhode Island or something. We're not
Yeah.
that big.
No,
It's
it's like a New England sized state,
yeah,
something like that.
yeah. So they see that importance of the agriculture, and they're like, no, we gotta keep this going because we don't want what happened to happen again.
Happen again. Yeah, absolutely. How much of what you do makes its way to the Trump administration? Do you guys have any sort of open dialogue with them about this?
Sometimes. For example, I mean, during his previous administration, he asked our think tank, the Middle East Institute, and Richard Clark and I to author what is now an addendum to the Abraham Peace Accord called the Abraham Cyber Peace Accord. So it was the world's first cyber peace accord, even though it's only between two countries right now, UAE and Israel. Other countries can sign on. But it also shows the importance of these two countries where they don't always get along, obviously, but they also have a lot of cyber weapons, and they're thinking maybe we shouldn't go full-on cyber against each other. That might be a bad idea.
Yeah.
So sometimes it makes it up, sometimes, especially little bits of my reporting, especially very detailed things, like when I first broke in English that Russian troops hit the ground in Venezuela, and they brought drone technology, and this was the first time in a long time we've had Russian troops in the Americas, and with weaponized drones. And you're like, well, and what? That's a bit problematic and very close.
Yeah, no doubt. It's not like Maduro and the United States have a very good relationship either, right?
I hope they never do.
Absolutely. How do you think that any of what you are doing is going to have any sort of influence in the change in perception on this administration's relationship between the United States and Ukraine, and then in getting more support? Do you guys think that?
Well, I would hope so. And again, I think the narrative needs to be correct, truthful and correct.
Sure.
So there has to be benefits. I won't lie. I think Ukraine should get loads of stuff, but at the same time, there has to be what is the American taxpayer, whomever, getting, and when that argument is given, going, hey, we're actually doing good stuff and saving our people money, et cetera, when that's changed around, people are like, oh, wait a second, that is a benefit. This is part of security and making us a bit more secure. But we have to change that narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. You do have to change the narrative. I think that the American taxpayer obviously is just so fed up with tax dollars going around the world, especially after 20 years of the global war on terror, and seeing what a disaster that was. But then too, a lot of at least what the American news says, and I think is true, but a lot of that money that goes there in the form of weapons, it's not just like cold hard cash. When we're talking like dollar amounts, we're talking about weapons and things like that, where it's unaccounted for, right? And that's not really much of a narrative as it is well, hey, if I'm giving you stuff and you can't even tell me where it went, right now there's a problem because I want to know the provenance on where that goes back to, because it comes back to me and my my paycheck or whatever. Is there? How do you guys, I mean, like not you, but how does Ukraine get better at articulating and demonstrating that if they're going to get support from the United States, that there's accountability, I guess, and it's not just going to, being sold and that money's going to oligarchs or whatever. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So to counter that, Ukraine had set up, I don't have the website, it would take too long online to do it.
You're good.
But there is a website that shows as much unclassified transparency as possible of all the money that is going in. Sure. And it's a Ukrainian government website to try to track transparency, because that's also a big question with the European Union. I'm not going to pretend that any country is perfect. And one of the reasons why, for example, 2014 Maidan occurred was because of oligarchs and corruption.
Yes, 100%.
the people were absolutely fed up with it. And then suddenly, I'm not sure you're aware, but Zelensky was a lawyer, decided because of corruption to become a comedian, and then got put on a television show.
Know this.
Yeah, called The Servant of the People, where he acts as I think it was a history teacher, and he gets elected by a bit of a surprise because people saw him go on this rant about he's tired of this, he's tired of that, he's tired of the corruption, he's, all of this kind of stuff. Right. And so the show takes you through, I think it's 3 seasons, and it shows you what it was like before. Right. And one of the plays is during different parts of every episode, the master oligarchs have a map of Ukraine moving around their pieces, going, do you want this part? Yes, but I want that part, and I'll give you this part. And that was one of the big problems. But then trying to push out this corruption, it's kind of difficult. Now, when he came in, he ran on an anti-corruption campaign, and it wasn't that long after that, unfortunately, the escalation occurred.
Yeah. How much? I'm wearing a Yuri Bezmenov shirt, so I got to ask this question. How much do you think that's like predictive programming, if any? Do you know what I mean when I say predictive programming?
Kind of ingrained. Yeah, it is. There is a tweet I like to use in some of my stuff from an account called Balkan President, and it's in broken English on purpose, and it says, the East is much more democratic because in the West you have to be wealthy in order to pay bribes, but in the East anyone can pay a bribe.
Ah, okay. I like that.
Right?
Yes. That's kind of funny. And not funny at the same time. But.
Right. So if you wanted to get things, especially when it was like Soviet times or after the fall, where it was really rough economically for much of the East, and especially like Yugoslavia, you had to do smuggling to survive sometimes. You had to get food on the black market if you wanted something more than standing in the bread line. If you wanted lipstick for your wife for your anniversary, where are you going to get that? You only had certain things you could get. Like I've been to the Communist Museum in a place called Varna, Bulgaria. And my friends were pointing out, oh, yeah, I had that bike. Yeah, I had that bike, too, because that was the standard issue bike. Oh, I had those plates because that's the standard issue plates.
Everybody got.
The shampoo, everybody got that. The cigarettes. So if you wanted anything else or needed anything else outside the system, then you were used to paying little bribes, getting over the border.
That's why Levi's were so popular.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It's really interesting because it's so funny how much social influence has on just changing hearts and minds, right? Like, the algorithm is just this century's Levi jeans and, pop culture and music. You know what I mean? It's wild how much things change the more they stay the same. I can keep giving all of these goofy colloquialisms and all this other stuff, but but it's true, right? Humans haven't changed that much over time. I'm kind of wondering if you know or have an opinion on who has better cyber capabilities, the United States or Russia? You have to ponder.
It's a bit of a mix.
Okay. Where's Russia better?
Russia
social influence
is very good at the social influence. They've had a very long game and a lot of practice. And I hope this does not come across as offensive, but one of the long games when it comes to influence, when Russia and the Soviet states were Soviet times were trying to say, no, U.S. is not good. So in the different languages, like Polish, Estonian, whatever, they made up a saying, but they lynch people there.
Okay.
And that was one of the ways they could say that the United States was so evil, in their opinion. And they had these sayings to do it. And so that hearts and minds were like, oh, it's so much better here because at least they don't do that there.
Right.
So when you brought up the traditional Russian Christmas thing, I saw the other commercial where there was a Russian family visiting U.S., moving there, and then all of a sudden the plane was full of all sorts of very, very loud and proud LGBTQ people, and they're like, "Oh my God!"
Of
Right?
course. Right.
Portraying the United States as a gay pride festival every day, and it's problematic because they're used to, like every place else, if it's on the television, it must be true.
Yeah. The U.S. does itself no favors in that vein either, though, right? With the propaganda, kind of falling or blowing up in our faces. Like when I was deployed to Africa, this was in 2019. I was in Kenya, and I had a conversation with a lot of the KDF, the Kenyan Defense Force guys out there. And it's funny, most of them speak like super good Oxford English, like better than most Americans I've met. And they used to be a British colony there. But every single one of them asked what I thought about LGBTQ rights, and then whether I knew anybody who was gay. And at first I was like, why the fuck do I keep getting asked this question? Like that's just so weird. And then, it's just like, well, because that's what they see online from the United States, right? And the United States comes to these countries and, pays money to try to influence to get, it to be normalized in other places that but they were very concerned about it. And, it honestly had a lot to do with whether or not they wanted to be nice to you or work with you in any way. I'm serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's not acceptable. Because I've seen the same thing in Tanzania. It's unfortunately not acceptable.
Yeah, exactly. And it's I'm just kind of saying that it is sort of what the U.S. exports in a way, is this image of that. And so it makes it very easy for Russia to have an influence campaign playing on all of this, because if you're if you're I'll say underdeveloped country like Kenya or Djibouti or Somalia, right, all in the Horn of Africa, that's what you see. I know.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. That's what you see, and that's why you ask American troops on the ground if they know anybody who's gay, and if I do, that I shouldn't be friends with them because they're why the world is of Satan and all these other things. It's just like, hey, bro, I'm just trying to do my job with you right now. So just making that point. Go ahead.
It's wild because I feel like I'm, was it the big fat Greek wedding? But the Netherlands was the first country to legalize gay marriage
Okay.
and give, in modern society, equal rights for LGBTQ.
Right.
And I guess it's been such a long time that it's just normal.
Yeah. It's not a second thought.
No, it's not a second thought.
Right.
But we're known for weed and hookers.
Yes, true. I've seen a lot of that. You see airmen coming back across the border from the Netherlands into Germany and getting stopped by Polizei on the Autobahn for driving while American, and they'll find weed or shrooms or whatever in their car. So it's part of the experience over there. I agree, but it's also one of the fun things about visiting the Netherlands and that part of the world, right?
Right.
I love hearing about all this stuff that goes on over there, because it isn't the typical narrative that hits the news stream here in the United States. Most of what I hear about, and we all live in these lenses, these bubbles that have, right, and what I see is corruption and why the support for Ukraine is bad and all this stuff, and that's obviously what the Trump campaign ran on last year very hard. And as an American citizen, right, everybody's sick and tired of our tax dollars going out the window. But if you could paint a picture of why, and you have very well, I think too, why it's so important that what you do is vital. But for the American who doesn't see, I guess, what goes on there, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that throughout the European Union, we are now being told to have emergency supplies on the ready and to have cash, because we cannot trust that Russia will not take out our ATM machines like they did in Ukraine just before they pulled in. So they restricted the cash. It was a psychological thing as well, right?
Yeah.
And imagine that effect if you're a family with children.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
No.
And we're losing electricity. So Nice just got hit with a cyber attack against their electric. And they suspect that Keynes was hit as well. And Nice was taken down now twice in the past day. Whilst I was in Estonia, riding on the bus to Narva from the capital, a ship left Samila, I probably butchered that name, which is an export to Narva. And the waters, the line between Estonia and Russia, very tight. So a ship left, and Russia seized that ship when it left their port.
Yes, you were telling me about this.
Right. A couple of days before I arrived, Russian jets made an incursion into NATO airspace, and at the time, the Estonian Air Force did not have the firepower to push them out. So other jets from other countries had to come. They also tried to board one of the Shadow fleet and did not have the troops to board it. So they think that the ship that was seized by Russia was revenge. So they changed their policy whilst I was in Narva, saying that they would not try to board any more of the Russian Shadow fleet. The Estonians said that.
Okay.
Now, from Spain's very odd excuse of atmospheric conditions, which made absolutely no sense.
No.
That's bogus. They're now
Why hide that it's a cyber attack? I'm sorry.
The reason being is if they publicize how much Europe is getting hit, it would be an Article 5 situation. We've had planes blown up. We've had shopping malls blown up. We've had all these different types of sabotage all over the place. We're, the UK, all these other countries are finding espionage and agents. Now, during Soviet times, there used to be this kind of saying called little green men. And those were the Soviets who would plant people in to, either start problems or be there and be at the ready if there were problems. And the new type of little green men is you've got Telegram and you've got money and you've got influence. Hey, I'll pay you €300 to take pictures of a military installation. I'll pay you $1,000 to drive a car. I'll pay you $800 to use illegal fireworks and blow up a building.
Yeah.
I'll pay you €1,000 to beat up Ukrainians on the street. Or I'll pay you €1,500 to beat up Russians in Europe and get arrested because we know you have Ukrainian citizenship. So it will then prove that everybody hates Russians to give the excuse that we have to protect ethnic Russians along the border.
Right. That's so wild. Nothing is real.
Nothing is real. And then when I look at certain Eastern European countries, and kids are taking part in this because it isn't just the grooming of children for tremendously bad sexy time things, it's also for distributed denial of service attacks, running ransomware for service against governments, propaganda campaigns, and sabotage. And if you are a teen who is getting groomed in this way, and people are saying, hey, you're doing great stuff, and they're bombarding you with that different lens, and you're desperate. You want to make money for your family. And, you might not even, you may have never even seen a washing machine.
Yeah.
So, boom, right?
Very easy target.
Very easy target. Again, it's not a chess game, it's a go game. You have to surround the house with enough to be able to get that house and take it over.
This is like the modern version of the Visigoths just settling the Roman frontier, you
Yes.
know? And then you eventually become incorporated into society, and it's normal, and now you all look less Roman and more proto-Germanic, right? And then it's
Right.
okay and normal, right? It's kind of wild how again, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's just the vehicle at which it happens. I want to go back to something you said. You said that they don't want to acknowledge that Europe's getting hit so hard with cyber attacks that it would be an Article 5 situation. The Spain one is obvious. I think it also, when it hits the news cycle here, it's always this small title, I don't know, let's pick a city, right? It's Hamburg hit with cyber attack. It's like, okay. People don't think much past that because they're like, oh man, somebody's computer didn't work, right? Like, not thinking that, well, that could mean all these other things and how much it affects your lives. So how much are we really talking? Can we put a number on that?
Well, when
Scale?
yeah, when Spain happened, was it Hamburg or Frankfurt, and also the city of Amsterdam, and I think another couple of cities, their government websites were hit.
Yeah.
So that means vital citizen services are hit, especially in like a really digital environment. And because we don't really have, say, landlines anymore, it's all digital.
Yeah.
Those things can be affected as well. So you might lose, for example, parts of your emergency services. You might not be able to report online a crime.
Use an ATM.
All these things, you suddenly you might not be able to file taxes or get your refund or do a bevy of different things. Report a gas leak, trying to figure out all of these different things.
Yeah.
And it's not a pleasant thing to think, holy shit. Excuse me. Holy smokes. Holy smokes. Here you are, I don't know, running a little bakery in the Netherlands. Here's my bread. What the?
Right? Shoes.
Right? Because like one of them was about a year and a half ago, the Dutch found that, the home routers, how often do you update that? And how often is it replaced? So it becomes an extreme weak point, and they found a whole line of, for instance, bakeries. The business routers were being leveraged for distributed denial of service attacks against the Dutch government.
Right, that's crazy.
From Russia. Again, little baker in his little wooden shoe, what the? We're instructed in the Netherlands to restart power off and power on our routers at least once a month, because that can break the persistence connection, and then they have to try to reattack it again.
Yeah, so you guys practice hardening quite a bit on all these things.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you just gave me an idea, like talking about the Internet of Things and people's homes. How scary can that get for somebody? And, yeah, I know. I'm sure your brain goes 100 different places. But like you said, the router, your coffee maker and your refrigerator, your washing machine, your alarm system, your garage door, all these things, right? Let's maybe even in a hyperbolic-ish way paint a scary picture about these things and how it's evolving to becoming a real threat for people, just the IoT.
Absolutely. Firstly, I've got to remember to send you some slides so that you can use it.
Okay.
Secondly, before COVID, oh gosh, man, it was such a wild ride during that. Pre-COVID times, I had the opportunity to present at the European Union's Parliament for an event, and with that, I was talking about this. So one section is, can I hack a house, with an evil little cat filing, and it turns out you're not supposed to make people laugh, but one lady burst out laughing.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm not a super serious. I can be super serious, but I do try to use some humor.
You're gonna get better listeners with some humor, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So I went through. Yes, you can hack a house. So there are some houses where they come with a smart system that then connects and controls everything. So with refrigerators, I can leverage that just like any other computer. I've run into situations where they've been used for massive spam, fraud, cryptojacking, you name it. But because they're not like a normal computer, you can't collect the evidence to figure out what the attackers were doing. If you want to do a mass attack against the electric system. Some countries, like the United States, depending on where you are in the United States, they can adjust your water heater to keep the load down. So they might turn it off during the day when they assume you're not home. But what if you adjust that in the wrong way and then you do what's called a load dump? You can then, right? But and also deharmonize your electric, which is very important. So the situation with Spain, it was first observed in parts of the UK that there was a deharmonization, and then it went wah. And the UK in that section had just recovered from Heathrow Airport getting taken out, which they're still investigating. So anything and everything. Now imagine the creepy factor. You're a father, and you want to watch your kid, make sure they're sleeping, all safe and everything. And unfortunately, those things can be leveraged by nation states, criminals, or perverts. And they're rather easy. Alarm systems are one of my favorites, right?
Yeah.
If they're connected to the internet, I can disconnect them and break in.
Right.
If I can find your smart meter, I can tell when you're home or when you're not, or how many people are inside, because it fluctuates.
Can you tell how many people are? Okay.
So if you fluctuate your temperature, and a lot of U.S. people use air conditioning, you might put it up if you're having a party because you have the body temperature, and so it'll rise. So these are certain fluctuations and patterns that you can pick up. And with that, you can shut off hot water. You can change the temperature. Let's say it's a data center and they're able to get in and they shut off the sensor to turn on the air conditioner and turn on the heat. It's already happened.
Right.
But in your house, and imagine it's in the dead of winter, and suddenly there are a whole bunch of, we'll just use, I don't even know if they're sold anymore, but remember those Google Nests? Temperature control.
Google Nest.
All right.
Yep.
So imagine if during the dead of winter and during a snowstorm, crazy nation state gets an exploit and then mass sprays as many of these things, causing an issue. And it wouldn't be the first time, unfortunately, that heating has been leveraged by a nation state. But this time in a more digital format. It's extremely creepy.
Yes, it is.
What you can do, one of the things I highly suggest that's somewhat easy if you're not technical is you may have your home router. It may not be as secure as you want it to be.
Sure.
But you can get what's called a small switch. And what that does, this is open to the internet. It's segmented. I've got this other barrier. Well, maybe it's too much hassle. I'm moving on to the next target.
Yeah.
And by that one simple step, you can actually minimize a great deal of risk in your home. And these switches cost maybe $25 to $35 US. And bam, it's that much more secure.
Right. Because at that point, you're a rarity, right?
Yeah.
Not many people are going to do that. So why waste my time when there's 500 other people in your town I can go after? Absolutely.
Exactly.
Now, that's a pretty scary thing. I don't think a lot of people understand just how accessible they are to the world. And I don't know. I think it has a lot to do with the way people think. And for Gen Z, Gen Alpha probably have a much better idea, like especially even coming. You don't think so? Oh, okay.
Ooh. So they've been doing studies, especially on Gen Z, and what they've been finding is they are much less technical as a whole. They can use a screen,
Really,
but they don't know what's inside. They've never had to experience fixing a computer or replacing a part. So it's just a screen that they're good at.
Okay.
And
so millennials are better at it then.
Millennials are better, and also they found that Gen Z is more susceptible to misinformation and propaganda.
No shit. Talk about that.
More susceptible in one study I read recently than senior citizens.
Yo, you're about to break some hearts. What? That is so crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I would actually love to get your opinion on this. Is sort of on topic, but like kind of not on topic, on voting and having to prove competence and a level of education. Like, what is your opinion on that? Because I think there's an argument to be made to prove a certain foundational level of education and also competence, and not just the fact that you're now 18 here in the United States, right?
Well, we would all love all of our citizens to have a
Right.
basic
Perfect
level
word.
of, civic responsibility and education. However, that isn't necessarily the case. Also, looking at the fact that there are some very, very intelligent people out there who are challenged in certain ways, like dyslexia. So if you
Yeah,
give
absolutely.
certain tests, that's going to be problematic. Like
Right.
one of my former sister-in-laws was a journalist, but
Yeah.
she had a rather extreme form of dyslexia. So
Gotcha.
imagine that must have been very challenging for her.
Especially as a journalist.
Right. So you've got these other things. So one cookie cutter approach is very, very difficult to do. I would
Yeah,
love,
no
for
doubt.
example, every high schooler to be able to pass the U.S. citizenship test.
Hey, I said the same thing. I
Oh,
totally
did
agree
you?
with that.
Yeah.
I have. I
Yeah,
totally
yeah, yeah,
agree.
yeah, yeah.
Why not? Why
Why
not?
not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a pretty good standard because then it shows you that you know a bit about your history, a bit about a whole
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, until we
It's
get there.
also oh sorry, I was just gonna say it's also like a way to show students leaving high school that you're a part of a collective. Like to enter the adult world fully, you have to do this and prove that you know at least this basic foundational knowledge that all these other people do for you to get to participate in civics here. And now you're voting on things that are going to determine outcomes for other people. Like
Yeah.
that is cannot be understated, right? How the importance of that at all. But that's so funny that Gen Z being more
Yeah.
susceptible to propaganda than the elderly,
Yeah.
because I mean I think more people probably hold a totally opposite view. I did. I'll just say, like, you disabusing. I'm gonna have to look that up and
Yep.
read about it. But that makes total sense about Gen Z. I guess not knowing how the sausage is made, so to
Yeah.
speak. Just that
Yeah.
it's a good one, you know. And but I mean, think about it. Like millennials my age, I mean, I was born in 87. I could tell you, I've got dozens of friends who built their own computers, dozens of friends. I mean, we all grew up, learning about computers from the beginning. I think everybody in my generation could tell you, oh man, I remember when dad came home with a computer, and now it's just, you're born into it. There's a computer in your hand, there's a computer, laptops. It's commonplace, and it wasn't
Yeah.
commonplace for millennials, so that makes total sense. I do want to pivot a little bit because I want to talk about something that I was told about you, and you know what I'm getting at here. This whole investigation thing that you were wrapped up in, and why you're living in the Netherlands, and all of this with our mutual friend Joaquin. Is his name,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes.
Yes.
I'm very curious about this because and disabuse me of the notion if I'm wrong, but that you have had to move around for your own protection. Is that right, or is that
Oh
an
yes.
overstatement? Yes.
Oh yes. Oh yes. So
Let's begin at the beginning. Let's hear all about this.
so back in the day, there
Back in the
was
day.
was a lady who was a U.S. Air Force intelligence officer whose name was Monica Witt.
Okay.
And during her time, she converted to Islam, converted
Okay.
to Shia
Okay.
Islam, which is, remember, Sunni is Saudi, Shia is Iran. That's how I
Yeah.
have to put it in my head every time. And then she defected to Iran. And the U.S. Air Force doesn't say much about what she did except intelligence and cyber.
Okay.
Right, so there's actually a Wikipedia article about her. It's kind of for obvious reasons. So in between, I take it that she was trying to set up a great exploiting team for the country of Iran. So I had already presented at one or more nuclear cyber conferences on some of my, I've been involved in some nuclear cyber stuff and cyber incidents.
She
That's
said
kind
casually.
of, right, just casually.
Right.
Don't worry, I do stock, potassium iodine pills. And so I get this LinkedIn request. And I'm like, oh, looks fine. Trying to grow your network. And they were looking for someone to give them training. And I had been at the time giving some very hands-on penetration testing training. And I go, oh, great. I can possibly get another contract, right?
Yeah.
And it sounded very vanilla at first. And in between this, and I should say, I think it lasted about 2.5, 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Maybe even longer, yeah. I had gotten ill in between, so I couldn't work for a little while. And I'll just call him my agent handler, kept going. And the more he was talking, the more he thought, I guess, we were having a friendship. We were not. And they set up dozens of websites, I think is what was found. Trying to make themselves legitimate looking. They had all these social media accounts that they made it look like it was real people, something that we call sock puppets.
Okay, makes sense.
Right? And put me in various meetings without video at the time. And were trying to tempt me, hey, first we want you to teach us something like a GPen. Oh, well, we can't travel there. Why don't you come here? Actually, finally, what we really want you to do is teach us how to exploit nuclear facilities, which was the final bit. As well as trying to instruct me on how to get paid to skirt sanctions. And then they invited me to the country, offered me €100,000 a month. They said that they would take me on this grand tour. I would get to shake my hand with a bunch of Iranian generals. I don't know if you've been to SEER training, but that was 101 of, make your hand limp before anybody can shake your hand. Give me a break, right? I'd be,
like revenge
winking.
For Stuxnet. Can you help us out?
Right. And, I'd be, winking SOS. And they were also asking things about Saudi Aramco and their network. So their arch nemesis. Yes. I had tried because I was like, this is getting dodgy. So I tried to contact the FBI. I left messages on the CIA tip line.
Wow.
Nada.
Nothing.
And so I was just collecting names, and I was like, maybe this is normal, but I'm also, a bit ill. I even at one conference, the dude had sent me a message. Well, we deal with a lot of European companies that know we're sanctioned, but we get the payments around. And I showed that WhatsApp message in my presentation because it was so hilarious, right? Because to me it was a bit surreal, but I thought, it must be normal. Nobody's taking it seriously, so it can't be that bad, right? So then I'm at a friend's retirement ceremony at West Point Military Academy. And it's after the ceremony, and we're having, some drinks. I'm looking at my phone, and I just burst out laughing. And the guy next to me is like, oh, what's so funny? Is it a funny meme? And I'm like, oh, no, the Iranian government just asked for my home address to send me a gift. And he's like, excuse me?
Right.
I go, oh, yeah. And he's like, wait. I'm like, he's like with Federal Marshals, FBI, Fusion Center, New York City, dude.
Yeah.
And he's like, wait, slow down. So then I at first I was laughing because I really thought nobody took this seriously. It can't be that, important if
you didn't get a call back.
Didn't get a call back. I mean, how many times did I have to call the CIA tip line? And I got nothing.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay. And then he's like, no. So, this is a problem. And so they start an investigation. They inform me that At the time, the Iranian government had already assassinated 3 people
Oh, shit.
in the Netherlands. And most recently, a couple of weeks ago, the Dutch also released another report and summoned ambassadors because they're killing more people on Dutch soil. Right?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. The Iranians they blown up all sorts of stuff, like in Belgium, killing hundreds of people. It's ridiculous. I don't know why they still have embassies anywhere in Europe, but whatever. And
Yeah, they don't deserve them.
right, absolutely do not deserve them. So they did not like that I went dark to them because the FBI had said just cut contact, go
Right.
dark. And so I guess somebody had taken pictures of my home and posted it on I'll just say like a jihadi extremist series of websites where I was labeled with a fatwa as an enemy of Islam, which is very contrary to my reputation in the Middle East, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Very contrary. And then I worked with some of my French counterparts because those websites were hosted on French servers and they were taken down. The Dutch police were involved. I started getting, let's see, that particular death threat doxed on, like one of my other friends. They like to dox you on Iranian national TV and put you in the press and label you all these things. And so I got a little pissed off, and I read that the Iranian government had enacted this new law, which said that any mixed-gender entertainment facility, like a restaurant or
Dance club.
a dance club,
Yeah.
had to have IoT cameras pointing where women would be, so not the bachelor section, for example. If you don't, some people might not know, but in parts of the Middle East, some restaurants and facilities will be separated by bachelors or families. So single women go to the family part, or the family part, male and female, or if you're a solo male, you can only stay in the bachelor part. No women are allowed.
Okay.
So
So, different than smoking, non-smoking. But
Right, it's bachelor, not family, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Right, it's just different. So the cameras would be pointed at the family side. And what it was if a woman removed her hijab, then they would run out and send the religious police. However, when I found these cameras, it's very sick, right? Who's so scared of hair? Whatever.
Yeah.
Right. I thought mathematically and with statistics and frequency analysis, and I go, that's going to be thousands of cameras. And what is the likelihood that thousands of cameras that are being administrated and managed by one party are going to have all different credentials and are going to be super secure? Because they need to get into these systems. They need the availability over that. So then I built a series of what we call dorks, or how to find it with at the time it was a University of Michigan project, but now it's called Census with a CESYS,
Okay.
variant of a spelling. And using that and a couple of other what we call open source intelligence tools, I was able to find over 10,000 of these cameras. I was able to get into all of them, and then I could disable them. I could also turn on audio. I could change the resolution, but before they were, taken
Look at
out, I happened to give them to a variety of different governments who may have used that for facial recognition to find terrorists.
Hell yeah. Good for you, dude.
And then I went public. So it's still my favorite quote ever in the media: revenge is best served over IoT. Then they had an assassination attempt, and then
Are you?
yeah.
How, are you okay to talk about that, or?
Well, I'm still torn between if it was just a really really bad trying to scare me, or trying to take me out.
Actual attempt.
Yeah. So you never know, but I don't like bullies. So then some more death threats. Finally, police get involved. and they had to come around and talk to my neighbors. So my neighbors had no idea what I did. And so they were instructed, anything that you see unusual, you call the emergency, not the non-emergency, but the emergency. And so
Yes.
they had orders for armed response to my street. So whenever I had to go into a safe house for a while and move around into different locations. And then the few times I was traveling during that to like NATO and Italy, they would have to make sure everybody knew. I was picked up with a armed folks, escort, watched everything. Yeah, it was really annoying.
Shit.
And then they messed up again. And so the handler guy contacts me again. And he's like, oh, how dare you talk about this, blah, 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 blah. You're a liar, you're a liar, you're a liar.
Wow.
So because his phone number showed, I gave his phone number to a friend with the Dutch police, who may have looked it up and seen a website that was set up using his phone number. And it turns out, when I went to the website to see what kind of website, it was a whole bunch of websites hosted in Germany that was set up by the Iranian government that was cloning legitimate news sites and changing the stuff.
Yeah.
For misinformation. And so I contacted the legal attaché of the American Embassy in the Netherlands, told him about it. We couldn't meet in person because of COVID. And funny enough, within 2.5 weeks, a big stamp on FBI, Department of Justice, has taken this whole thing down, and they took down the whole operation. So the idiot was such an idiot
Yeah.
that
Using his
kept giving away operations. Sure, go ahead. Keep sending me death threats. We'll see what else I take down.
right. Dude.
Cool.
That's how long did this last?
Oh, so it would have been into 2021, I think. Yeah, because I was moving around in safe houses for about 9 months during 2021. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, whatever. Cool.
That's
Come at me, I'll hit you harder. That's what I say.
yeah. Come at me, bro. So you said that they tried to take you out. Like, was this like somebody on the street, or was it just communicating threats? Like,
No,
we're
it
gonna
was
kill you?
a rather powerful illegal level of tear gas.
Like in your home.
No, me and a couple of friends were in Vegas smoking cigars at a cigar bar. And I remember one of my friends saying, I love you as a friend, but I didn't think I would be collateral damage.
Whoa.
Yeah. It
Trying
was
to
quite
process that.
f***ed up. It was really not nice. It
Yeah.
was so not nice.
So they got to. Forgive me if I'm not
We're in
understanding
a
this. They got to some.
in
This is
a cigar
uncomfortable
bar.
for you to talk about.
No. It's
Okay.
it was in a cigar bar, and all of a sudden, some guy came out of nowhere and threw really, really powerful illegal level tear gas into the cigar bar while we were there, and there was like one or two other people just shopping for cigars, and we were it was tremendously terrible. It was really bad. I mean, really bad.
I'm so sorry. That's
So
fucking crazy.
yeah.
I mean, in Vegas, there's cameras everywhere. Did they catch
Yeah.
who did this?
Not that I'm aware of, because both my friend and I both asked, and they're like, no, they didn't catch anybody, and you're like, fuck, fuck me.
Yeah.
God damn, man.
Well, forgive me for needing the picture paint's description to understand exactly what happened to you. But that had to be very traumatic, and probably still sits with you quite a bit.
It makes me want to hack them out of spite.
Yeah. Well, good for you. Like, they don't know like how long you've been doing this,
Right.
Like, listen, I'll go to a school library in pigtails, and we'll get right in there and go after you.
Right.
But no, that's crazy. Do you feel safer now?
Well, I mean, I don't know about safer. I feel bolder because it just pisses
Sure.
me off. I announced about a month and a half ago a new project during a keynote in Bulgaria where the Iranian government, the former administration removed sanctions, I don't know why, from a company called Hikvision. And this company had developed facial recognition to pick up the Turkic features of the Uyghur people. The Uyghur people are Turkic.
Yeah.
Not Turkish, but Turkic. And they don't like anyone that's not Han Chinese. They want this
Yeah.
hominization.
Yep.
So they signed a contract with the Iranian government, I believe it was November of last year, to do hair recognition for the IoT. Yeah, for women removing the hijab.
Yeah. Oh,
and you're
okay,
like,
okay. Yes.
are you kidding me? You're now doing hair recognition? And so they
That's
signed this
crazy.
contract, and there was, a bit of a blurb in, some of the press because they had just had these sanctions lifted for doing this dodgy stuff in China with the Uyghur people.
Uyghurs.
And now they signed this thing with Iran.
Yeah.
And you're like, how scared again, why does hair scare you? But
Yeah.
yes.
No, I can tell this has a very visceral reaction to you. Somebody tried to kill me. I'll just be real with you. Once it wasn't as cool of a reason as what happened. No, maybe cool is not the right word. So, but it wasn't as born identity, I guess, attempt as what happened to you. But I could see just how much of a visceral reaction, emotional reaction it gives you, right? Like, you said it makes you want to hack them out of spite.
Yes.
Is something personal? I mean, it's personal for you because they try to kill you. But like, what? I'm trying to think of a way to ask this without like sounding stupid. But like, what do you? How does that motivate you? I guess it might be a way to put it.
It motivates me to watch, learn, and share.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. I think this is one of the things that I've learned so much about talking to you is just how much other countries that I wouldn't think of are involved in cyber espionage, cyber warfare in ways, they're running into a cigar shop in Vegas and throwing tear gas at you. That takes a lot of work. And you think about it, like walking it back, like they had to know you were traveling there. They had to know somebody was watching you, waiting for you to get comfortable in the cigar shop to where, maybe you wouldn't notice them running. Right. Yeah. Like
had a couple drinks.
Yeah. No, I mean, like when you really start to like let that materialize in your mind, like that's a very scary picture. Just how much the lengths somebody would go to take you out because of the camera thing, because they were tracking women, and then trying to see, well, who's taking their hijab off or not, right? Like that's so wild to me. Like just to think, when I think of cyber warfare, I don't think of things like that. How much of what happened to you happens other places?
Well, funny you should ask. So recently I was meeting with a group. They are called the Bulgarian Elves, and and they were the group who found proof of voter fraud last year in the Bulgarian elections. They also found proof of some really dodgy, corrupt politicians who were trying to get a new gas pipeline into the EU via Bulgaria and Turkey out of Russia.
Yeah.
But, oh, no, we're not doing that. But they found the map and all of the proof, right?
Yeah.
And so that particular group, they've got the best logo, they're doing a lot when it comes to the corruption and the Russian oligarchs and what Russia's trying to do. And some of them have survived getting their cars blown up.
Is there a group of people that, this is going to sound stupid, but are like, I don't know, cyber spies that work to like actively to stop this sort of stuff from anything like these governments from doing what they do and are, I don't know any other way. I don't know another word to use it, other than spy. So if I sound stupid saying that,
No.
like counter operatives, like that,
Yeah. Oh,
yes?
yeah, definitely. So there are a variety of counter operatives that have seen in operation, and especially the eastern countries where they try to counter the propaganda. They try to, counter a lot of this stuff, and also try to help secure things. But it's a bit of a challenge because not all the laws facilitate and enable, say, an ethical hacker to help. They can just get arrested. You don't want that. So it's got to be done very delicately in certain areas, in certain countries. And it's a struggle, but there are definitely people that do, or try to report, or work with some of the computer emergency response teams, or periodically with the police and so forth. And one of the bridges that occurs is when the police have a big investigation and they don't have the cyber capability, they will then go, hey, group who's been doing this great work over here, can you actually help us with this? And so then relationships start getting built.
Yeah. What is a problem in this cyber warfare realm that you think doesn't get enough attention?
Too many academics, too few technologists.
Okay. What is, yeah. Can you flesh that a little bit more?
Sure. So when I first started, when it was finally called cyber warfare, but I'd already experienced loads of digital attacks with Space Command and so forth, and precursor to what we see today. In the academic world, I have much respect for the academic world. I am partially an academic. There is this idea that if an academic says something, it must be true. And there was this belief amongst the academic world, who rarely have any military experience or emerging technology experience, because when they get to that point, they're just co-authoring papers, but somebody else is writing it, they're getting credit, whatever, they're, and then grant money. It's a weird thing. They would say, there's no such thing as cyber warfare, because you see, you can't have a cyber war without bullets being involved. But it's very funny because in 2022, when I was in Moldova in May, the country was getting shut down. Moldova is a European country, not an EU country, and not a NATO country, and not a single bullet was shot, but they border Ukraine. And so their wine industry was getting massively affected, which is a big thing there for their economy. And I was so utterly bloody frustrated when I would go to government level conferences and they would spout this stuff. And I'm like, no, that's not true. But because I didn't have an Oxford degree and I had the technical information and I'd already been dealing with this stuff and I'd already been publishing research in it. And I mean, like, one of my predictive algorithms is used for what cyber warfare looks like from 2009 from the North Korean attacks that hit South Korea and the United States and the FAA. So you can find it on Wikipedia and cyber warfare. But yet, because it wasn't an Oxford publication, and you're like, honey child, let me tell you something. When you can show me how to find your own IP address in a command prompt, then you can tell me something about actual cyber warfare. They didn't consider, for example, influence operations. And you're like, excuse me? I don't understand, because winning hearts and minds before troops come through or before cyber comes through, it's kind of crucial if you don't want door-to-door guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
Right? That's an impossibility.
It's so crazy to think that you can measure just by the online propaganda campaign to influence people socially, that you can tell, like, yep, all right, there's probably something that's going to go on here. That's part of this like gray zone area that we talk about so much that I think people wouldn't even realize. But it's funny. I see more of what you're talking about, and it getting better here in the United States. as well. More companies and agencies are looking for people with skill over degrees, especially in the cyber.
Please.
Yes, it's become an oversaturated field as well. Like how many of these like online, whether boot camps or degrees, you see that don't really you get like a bachelor's degree in cybersecurity, but it doesn't really teach you much outside of maybe some terms and you understand. But I'm going to hire the guy with a bachelor's in cybersecurity, but not the person who's got all these like CompTIA certs and all these other things they've got, cloud computing, so that's good. I see a shift. I've seen a shift into more like technical prowess versus academic resilience, and that's, I agree with you. That's the best way to do this. Like I want the kid who's been hacking the DOJ since they were, just hit double digits, I'm just saying, versus the dude that just got out of a career with a bank and then got an online degree in cybersecurity, but it's a bachelor, so it counts more.
Yeah, but one thing I would add is one skill that is definitely needed is also being able to communicate, and that includes write a report. So bridging that gap between the technical to the managerial and executive is very useful. And if you don't have a degree, I would highly suggest taking some community college courses on researching certain things and creative writing, because you want your stuff engaging.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? And so a few of those courses to beef up your communication skills. And also do things like join Toastmasters or speaking groups, because eventually you're going to have to present those findings to a group of stuffy people in very fancy suits.
Who are going to appreciate a little bit of levity that you're bringing, right? I have two questions left for you, if you're not running out of time here. Does the infrastructure you're talking about of having like the academics who can write and present and come at things from that angle, and then you guys as the technical side of things, is that like infrastructure exists to facilitate a good flow of information? No, doesn't exist.
Not yet. And it's very aggravating, because this is how a lot of business opportunities are made. For example, if you as a technologist have something that you want to prove but you're not quite sure how, and you need peers or publication and you don't have the credentials, you have to meet in the middle. And those things like the proofs and so forth, that can be commercialized, that can be patented. And if you don't have that, then how do you get industry going? And there's all these opportunities that you're missing out on. So we have to bridge it more and more. Also, I can't just say, ooh, stuffy academics. Also, a lot of technologists have, opinions or their own, we're thought of as not being able to communicate.
Yeah, socially awkward.
Socially awkward.
Just being real, yeah.
Right? So you have, and not wearing deodorant. So you have to come in the middle. That does hurt engagement, trust me.
Hey, yeah. Yeah, exactly. The only reason he's not sweating is because he's been in the server room for an hour. And he comes back in here, right? Yeah, no. Anyway, anecdotal things. Yeah, right. Yeah. No, that's great. That's you. I feel like that needs to happen, and it needs to happen really fast.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
It should be already happening.
Yes.
Is this an ego thing? Do you think?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, how unfortunate. Human beings are very bad at removing their ego. Last time we talked about how there's not any sort of threshold for declaring kinetic war, like Article 5, based on cyber attacks, right? And that Article 5 includes, like, since 2014, something, a concession or a carve out for cyber, but it doesn't actually define what that looks like, right?
No.
If you, Chris Kubecka, could say this is a red line, or what the how big a cyber attack would have to be to go to kinetic war, would there be a way, like, how would you paint that threshold out?
So we once did a scenario, I think it was It would have been 2017, after the inauguration for the first administration from President Trump. And we got together all the EU NATO representatives, put them in a room, and our final scenario simulated mass casualty attacks. So setting fire remotely to the transformer electric system of the country of Poland.
Sure.
Then taking out some other stuff, some hospitals, but then finally attacking the London Underground and during rush hour, affecting the signaling and causing trains to go smashy, right?
Yeah.
And we had broken up the countries into different round tables so that you don't have every country, you just have a country of like 4 or 5 or something like that. And here are the scenarios, and they had to decide by table. And it ranged from one grouping of countries, their reaction was nothing, to my group of countries, may have influenced them, decided to
Good for you.
right, launch a nuclear weapon into the upper atmosphere of the attacking countries and take them out with an EMP to halt the attack.
Yeah.
So you have a very wide range.
Wow. Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And so and that was 2017, and you're itching your head, and you're like, oh, come on, I should have figured that one out. But yeah, no, it is not defined. I would venture to say if there was enough casualties or enough interruption.
That's what I was just getting ready to say from your description, that it would have to lead to, you'd have to prove that the origin of it was cyber in nature and then causing mass human loss and also a total breakdown of society, and like you said, the rail system, traffic lights, ATMs, all this stuff, like things that would stop movement and create chaos within society. I agree with you, and I think that needs to happen. And I think it also would be good to do it because it's a preventative measure, I would think, as well, because now you are drawing that red line, and you're saying, this is what we're going to consider the threshold for kinetic war. If you reach this, then it's going to happen. And that's just the sort of big stick talk that mitigates things like that happening. And I know mitigation is got to be a big thing on your plate. Yeah. It's something that you guys are constantly doing. Risk management, all these things, is something that you're always thinking about, right? I want to let you go. We're coming up on 2 hours here. I know you probably got a busy day ahead of you.
They're starting to make toast in the background.
Right. I heard them. When I was listening, I was like, they're totally making breakfast. So we got to let you get breakfast. But really, I just want to thank you again for your time. I think you're an absolute badass. I love listening to what you have to say, and I think to me, you're one of these people who's like so important in what happens around the world, but nobody knows who you are. And that's one of the things I'm trying to do. This 2-part series here that we're doing, that you're always welcome to come back on for parts 3, 4, 5, and up. But if you could leave anybody on the topics we've talked about today with a message on why it's important to keep yourself safe, I guess, in this new digital age, what would you tell somebody? One of the best ways to do that, keep yourself safe.
So, to keep yourself safe, try little measures. Make sure that if you can afford it, keep your phone updated. And the reason being is these phones are now being used for massive DDoS attacks. There was a case I worked on involved the gray wolves in the United States, where they had leveraged IoT and also these phones that belong to U.S. citizens to then launch an attack, a cyber attack against a U.S. organization. Right? So they get inside, and then it's harder to stop. It's easier to stop at a digital border than it is on the inside. And they were leveraging everyday Americans and what was in their pocket to attack other everyday Americans.
Right.
So if you can afford to keep your phone updated, like once it runs out, if it's older than 3 years old, I would definitely do that. And restart it periodically, the same as a home router, because it breaks what's called persistence.
Okay.
I would,
Persistence.
if you have an Android, install antivirus. And the reason being is there's a lot of stuff that goes on your smartphone, and your keys to the kingdom are typically also on there. So you might have a banking app, you have all your contacts, you have all your kids' information,
Everything.
you've got other people's information, you've got your
Yeah.
two-factor authentication. And so be aware of that. Another thing is when you see information, it's not always true. So just
Yeah, Gen
after
Z.
the just after the Romanian election, let's see, I was in Brussels. I got to the Amsterdam airport to get here, and I'd gotten a message in between from Romania about a bunch of this big misinformation campaign. So what the Russians had done is, I guess, Euronews is like the EU news station.
Okay. Like BBC,
And-
but yeah.
Yeah, right? And they had set up a perfect clone of Euronews, but with a headline saying that it was proven that the French government had interfered with the Romanian election. And it looked spot on, and it looked absolutely
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
And
Accusation.
right? So imagine if they did that to Fox News, CNN, whatever, all of the other stations.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, we've already had a situation where a Syrian-backed group called the Syrian Electronic Army hacked into the Associated Press's Twitter account at the time and said, there's been an explosion at the White House. President Obama has been hurt. And our stock market went bam,
Holy shit. Yeah.
right? So this is real important to double check those sources. Do not take, and it's very unfortunate,
Right.
but if you see a headline, check another place and check another
Yeah.
place
Yeah.
because it
It's
is
like-
so bad.
It's like that photo that came out last year of the Pentagon. There was like a fire on the. Do you remember this? It was an AI picture, and it was just like an angle of one of the outer walls of the Pentagon building, and it looked like it was on fire. It was AI, but it hit the news, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, the Pentagon's under attack!" And it was so similar to what you were talking about with the stock market. But all right, last question for you: what's more secure, iPhone or Android?
It depends on how you have the phone set up.
Okay, depends on
Yeah.
how you have the phone set. Do VPNs work?
VPNs that do not collect logs work. There are only two companies that I know of that don't collect logs. One is called Multivlod, I think it is. It's a European company, no logs. And another one is Proton Mail. But if you're using things like NordVPN and whatever, check the privacy policy, because when I read like NordVPNs, they're headquartered in Panama City in a derelict high-rise building, and they say that they're under the laws of Panama. So maybe, and they also say that they collect logs because they want to sell you more services. But if you go to a place that does not collect logs and they say we just don't have any logs, check that one out.
Okay, that's great advice.
I'm sure there's more than two, but those are the two that I'm familiar with over here. But yeah,
Yeah. I
and
used Express a lot when I was in Germany, ExpressVPN, but yeah.
if you don't want to read the privacy policy, here's what you do. You break it up and you put it into ChatGPT and ask it to give you a summary. Bam.
Right.
Done.
That's smart, actually.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
ashamed to admit I've never even thought of that, but that's
Make it
genius.
easy, man.
Yeah,
Make it
absolutely.
easy. Yeah.
Chris, thank you so much for your time. I don't know what you've got going on here the next couple of days. Obviously, stay safe. I wish you nothing but the best in what you're doing. And I look forward to the slide deck you were talking about and talking to you again. So enjoy your hotel breakfast in Europe. I miss it. And you have a great rest of your week.
All right. Thank you so much. It's been a
You're welcome.
pleasure as always.
Yes, and go check out her books. Go check out her books. Can't tell you that.
Oh,
enough.
yes. It funds my research.
Yes, right. There you go. Absolutely. Fund her research, guys. Come on. Let's do it.
Exactly.
Have a great day, Chris.
All right. You too. Ciao, ciao.